Hey, this is Writer's Row. I'm DC Wright-Hammer, and wow, what a time to be alive. Things have been very interesting, to say the least, and I got to thinking, how do we keep our wits about us in isolation? How do we continue on? And how do we even come out of this stronger than going in? Something we never thought we'd be part of, nothing like it that I can, compare it to, and pretty much nobody alive has anything really like this that they can compare it to. And so my mind started to just take me places and trying to come up with a way to relate this back to life, but related back to writing. And in this episode, I want to tackle writing realistic characters and how drama and thrillers are the characters in those stories are particularly hard to write, and how we can use this time to be observant, to listen as much as we might want to speak, and to come up with better, more realistic, believable characters if you're writing in genres that that's appropriate for. And I actually have two books that I want to analyze quickly. I want to keep this a relatively shorter episode, but it'll give us some perspective, and then from that, I think we can come to some pretty interesting conclusions. Before I get into the meat of the episode, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Click on that subscribe button or tap it if you're on a smartphone. And then go over and give this video a thumbs up down below in YouTube. That helps out with the algorithm, and it also gives me more confidence to continue making videos. And so I wanted to start with an anecdote. We had been putting off going to the grocery store for a while. We had most of the things we need, and we could do without for many of the other things. And it finally came to a head where we were just running low on too many things, and I was getting a little nervous. So I made a run to the grocery store, and it's less than a mile away, so super quick drive. I parked on the side of the building to give myself extra social distance, and I went in the store. And I had a lot of preconceived notions on what I thought I was going to see while I was there. I had a lot of anxiety. I'm a fairly social person, but going into this grocery store was very weird. I didn't want to look at other people. I obviously didn't want to breathe on them. I was scared I would cough, even though I'm healthy by all standards. And it just was very anxiety-ridden trip to a grocery store we go to all the time. And it wasn't that packed, and the shelves, some of them were empty, but the majority of the things we needed were in stock, so I was really excited about that. And I, got just what I needed. I didn't buy extra or hoard or panic buy. There was a couple of impulse buys, but things that I just thought would be fun for the kids and me and my wife. So, everything was fine, whatever, it worked out. When I went to check out, I was really gracious to the cashier. There was a person bagging my groceries. I was very gracious to him, just kind of trying to keep my space. And I noticed that I was really sweating profusely. I was so uncomfortable in just a normal situation. And so, I got home. Everything is fine as a result. There's no, just got me thinking about where isolation, where social distancing, and where a virus like this and poor responses from governments around the world, what that can do to the people that are in the countries, the people that are in the world. As a writer, I go to fiction to help me rationalize some of this stuff. And as a result, I started thinking about books that I've read that I've liked a lot, and I wanted to start analyzing them. So books that have to do with isolation, books that have to do with being in situations where you can't trust your fellow human and things like that. And so I want to break down two books, compare them, talk about the fear and anxiety that's present in those stories, and contrast them, and talk about how realistic they are in the stories that they're being told, and how we as writers can actually learn from this situation, be observant, and become better writers as a result of it. I know that's sort of lower on the priority scale right now. We're just trying to survive, but if we are using writing as a way of helping us get a little bit of a escape, a little bit of a break mentally, it allows us to travel to the lands where we have control. I think that could be beneficial. First book that I want to break down for you is The Martian by Andy Weir. And I'll bring up an image on the screen, but I also own an actual copy of the book, and I read it last year. I had seen the movie already, but the book is very good. For those who have not read it, I'm going to give mild spoilers. I'm going to not give away the ending on either book that I talk about, but in The Martian, Mark Watney is a NASA botanist, I believe, and he's on a mission to Mars, and by all accounts it's a routine mission to Mars. He gets caught in a sandstorm, and he gets lost from the other group of astronauts he's with, and he gets stranded on Mars with very few resources, and no one's ever been on Mars for that long, for any duration other than missions that have gone there. And he is a NASA botanist, biologist to some extent, and he's also a very stubborn smartass in that whenever he gets into a situation, he resorts back to being a problem solver. He becomes this, person who just, any obstacle that gets put in his way, his mind just starts going. And what Andy Weir is able to do in the book is very consistently have Mark's character do this time in and time out. Whenever things go wrong on the planet, he's able to start getting through them. And again, I won't spoil the ending, but even with that consistency, the end of the book is very dramatic, and you still aren't quite sure how things are going to work out, because in the end, yeah, he was isolated on a planet for a long time. He has to work with NASA and the time delay that there is communicating with Earth to come up with a plan for him to survive. And then beyond that, possibly, maybe, if everything can kind of go in his direction, maybe he could get rescued and go back to Earth someday. Though that drama, that way of them setting that up, it was very, his character throughout that process, very consistent, which was good because it kept the reader, okay, this is who this character is. Even if he was a bit robotic, I think you can excuse that away with the fact that he is a NASA scientist, that he is scientific thinking, he's always thinking that way. And then you do start to realize how stubborn he is the more you get in the book. And Matt Damon did a pretty good job of that if you have seen the actual movie of it. But overall, he's isolated, and there's only hints of fear. The part that I think was good because it was consistent with his character is there's periods of fear and things like that, but it's very minute, it's very subtle, and there could have been more of that, but I think the setting and all the things that Andy Weir is able to do in the book otherwise sets up, and the character doesn't have to produce or show you that they're scared or talk about how scared they are or anything like that. The situation in and of itself brings that to the reader. And I think that isolation that he experienced and the situation that we're in, it very much parallels being on Earth, but being in your neighborhood, being in your home, and feeling weird going to your grocery store, feeling alien to some extent, that it's somehow different than it was the week prior or 2 weeks or the hundreds of times you've been there just to run an errand. and suddenly it feels like you're on a different planet. And capturing that type of subtlety, capturing that in doing character development is very difficult. It's you have to do a lot of show don't tell, in their behaviors, in their responses, in what they don't say, sometimes what they don't do, in what's expected. And you can convey fear, you can convey anxiety in ways that are really going to draw your reader in. And I think in The Martian, they didn't have to do as much of that because the setup right from the jump was very, very much he's a problem solver, but he's in a really bad situation. Is his problem solving going to be enough? Sort of where the fear comes in for that. So, great book. I do recommend reading it. It's a super fast read. It's a fun read. And obviously it's been out for a while, but if you're looking for something, about isolation, claustrophobia, maybe it's not the greatest thing to read right now, but I had read it and it came to mind when I thought about putting this video together. Next book I want to talk about is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. And this one came out, I want to say, in the 90s. And it also was made into a movie with the star Viggo Mortensen. That came out probably 10 or 12 years ago or so. Very good book. So the premise of The Road, if you haven't read or saw the movie, is it takes place in a nondescript time period. You assume it might be futuristic, but it is a post-apocalyptic world. But it's not dystopian in that there really doesn't appear to be any government structure. There's discussion or talk about there being fire in the world burning, and the general landscape is ashen and burned and void of color and life and things like that. You follow a character, these are unnamed characters, a father and a son, and they're just their main goal. They have actually two main goals. Number one is to survive, and number two, they have this notion, the father got this idea, was told that if they get to the coast, they'll somehow be safe, or they'll be able to start a life, or something will be materialistically different in their, in their world and the things that they want to do with their lives. And this book, while the characters are not isolated, they're on the road, they're traveling, and they keep moving. You still feel a sense of isolation. There's a few times where they run into other people, other humans, and it's very contentious. They're not sure if they can trust them. They proceed with caution, or they're at a distance, or they're very, very scared in the sense that they don't know what's going to happen next, and they could be taken advantage of, they could be killed, they could be beaten, anything could happen. And that distrust and that loneliness, while they're not necessarily physically isolated in a given space, they were definitely isolated from other people. Their journey was a journey of isolation, even though they're on the road and they're moving. With the way things are going and the way it sounds like time periods are getting longer and longer, schools are closing for months now, not just weeks, it just reminded me of that isolation, that when am I going to see my friends, my family, or just even a kind stranger? When am I going to get out of my house regularly? When am I going to be able to go to the places that I go, run an errand without thinking about it? These are the things that I think we take for granted now. And it's crazy because in The Road, there's no civilization. People are just kind of doing what they do. This father and son are on this long journey, and it feels like they're constantly cold. They're constantly hungry. They're constantly scared, but they keep pushing forward. They keep surviving. And that's where I think the parallels in the book come in. The books, The Martian and The Road, come in are very obvious. Even though the characters the main characters in The Father and Mark Watney go about things quite differently. The father is not scientific. He seems like he's probably from a working class background. He's got a lot of knowledge. He's very handy because of necessity, but he's just survive, hide, run. And Mark Watney is very much tackle it head on, analyze it, run the math, work it out. They're both driven. They're both, even though Mark Watney doesn't show fear, there's slight hints of it in the situation. Just there's no way a real life person could not be scared in a situation, and they persevere. They push forward. The books, I won't spoil the endings or anything like that. They're satisfying endings, even if they don't end exactly how you might think they would end. But I think what you can learn from that is twofold. Number one, if you're writing characters in dramatic situations or in thrillers, when the action starts to go up, the way they respond to it can speak volumes. You can have realistic characters without extra dialogue, without extra movements, or without them confessing exactly how they feel, and that can really bring things to life for your readers. And I really think that we can also learn a lesson in real life in that it's okay to be scared, that we're going to be scared in life. I think probably the majority of my life, when something big is coming up that requires me to focus and work hard and get it right, and people are depending on me, and just myself, I'm depending on myself to do the right thing and be a good person and get it right, take advantage of opportunities, further myself as a person, whatever it might be. I'm scared going into a lot of those things, and still I push through. I'm anxious about a lot of things, and still I try to be a good person. I try to default to doing what's best for myself, my family, but also my neighbors, also my friends and family, everybody that I love, the human race. We've come a long way from evolutionary, just becoming human-like forms, to having complex governments and languages and ideas and writing these cool books and everything like that. And it's absolutely worth fighting for. You're the person watching this. You're absolutely worth fighting for. And I encourage you that if you're feeling scared and fearful and lonely and isolated, that you figure out a way to push through. If it's writing, do more writing. If it's watching movies, whatever it is, if you're still working, be like Mark Watney, be like the father in The Road, and persevere and push through. And however you deal with stress and anxiety and fear, do what you do and continue on. And as roadblocks and barriers get put in front of you, figure out a way to get around them, move them, whatever it takes. But don't just succumb to fear. Don't just wither away because things are tough. I don't know, who's watching this or when, but you have a place in this world, and you do everything you can and allow other people to help you out as well. Even if you feel isolated, even if you're scared, keep on going on. And I appreciate everybody who's watched this long. It's a rough time, so this video was just, let me get my thoughts out at a really rough time. But if you liked it, like I said, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Take care, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.